third episode of our new series, Diversity Matters, where I get the opportunity to discuss the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion with leaders across the country. My name is Teresa Palacios Smith, and I'm Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. And I'm so excited about this series, which shines a spotlight on influential figures who are driving meaningful change in the realm of diversity matters. And today I'm honored to introduce you to Jamar Hardy. Jamar, welcome. And Jamar is a true leader in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion within the real estate industry. Jamar is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion and Managing Broker for Edina Realty, and also the 2023 President-elect for the Minneapolis Area REALTOR Association. And I think I got that wrong. It's Minneapolis Area Realtors. In his nearly 2 decades in real estate, Jamar has emerged as a driving force for change and has dedicated himself to expanding opportunities for historically underserved communities in housing and real estate careers. His work with the Just Deeds Project, we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail, helps homeowners identify and remove racial covenants. And it has been monumental because it has helped reform mapping prejudice in the Twin Cities for many individuals and families. And Jamar is also very active in the community. He serves on the board of directors for several organizations and also currently holds the position of board chair for the Link Minnesota. And this organization provides vital support to at-risk youth in the Twin Cities. And we've been honored to be able to participate in a couple fundraising events for that organization. So I'm so excited to welcome Jamar to the show. Jamar, hello. So excited to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this that we got going on right here. So thank you for having me on.
Oh, well, and one of the things I always want to know, because you are in real estate, and a lot of people are in different areas that we'll be interviewing and talking to when we within the Diversity Matters program. But one of the things I want to know is, how did you get into real estate? What was your journey through your process of becoming part of the Edina Realty company?
Well, I didn't start my real estate career with Edina. I did start with a competitor firm, which actually is located or was located a few blocks away from where I currently lead the 53rd and Lindale office at Edina Realty. But my 20 years in the business started with a different firm, and really, my story is when real estate bumped into me. One of my passion projects has always been working with youth. I know how important it was for me as a youth to have mentors, and really through sports, right? So I was coaching high school basketball at my high school alma mater, Richfield High School, Go Spartans. And one of the top assistant coaches that came in at the time, Lance Burwald, actually introduced me to real estate, and really was a pathway of, I was doing retail sales. And as I climbed that ladder, they just wanted more and more time, and I wanted to be in the gym with the kids. So my leap of faith into real estate was all about having more time to work with youth around the passion that I had of coaching high school basketball. Lance made it look easy, wearing a suit, driving his Escalade, always on the phone. So I just asked a lot of questions and just jumped into it. And I'm here 20 years later.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you threw that go Troch. Is it Spartans?
Spartans, yeah.
I love that you threw that in there. First of all, I really have to commend your Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And for those that don't know this about Edina Realty, they really have a phenomenal D&I council, and they've been working together. I know their theme is Stronger Together. They're one of our leading councils across the country for Home Services America. Very proud of all the work that y'all are doing. So tell me a little bit more about that, because, again, you are everything that you do. How's that kind of influenced and impacted not just your agents, but also your leaders and the community as a whole, because you do so much?
Yeah, I always put it back to the forward thinking of our executive leadership team, Greg Mason, our CEO, Sherry Schmidt, our president of the company, really being open to the conversation around, Minnesota. There's the prosperity lens of home ownership. We're near the top in home ownership rates in the nation, right? But then the disparity is when you break it down of homeowners of color, we're the top of that list too, right? So how can we, being a leader in our footprint, our area, lead in a meaningful way. So it really was the re-engagement of we used to call it Diversity Council. When I became a leader back in 2016, having that very honest conversation, myself and phenomenal agent Leroy Bendixson talking to Greg at a national conference mixer and saying, hey, can we do more with Edina? And that was really the talking point on how we re-engaged our Diversity Council to what it is today as our Diversity and Inclusion team. And really, I think we're making more spaces inclusive. And I always say when you talk about DEI, sometimes we forget about the inclusive approach at the mission of DEI work, and really was trying to create more inclusive spaces, because we all know when we talk about change agents, to change anything in any market, you got to have those leaders that look like the people you're trying to attract with the message, right? So I would like to say for myself, I'm a leader of color at Edina Realty, which, this company was started by Emma Rovick, which in her own way was a very diverse back when she started our company almost 70 years ago. So it's just kind of been in our DNA, and it's nice to really push that forward in a meaningful way currently.
And I know that you do just, to highlight some of the events that the council or the team, and I love that, has done, that are very community. So first of all, every year, and I was not able to participate this year, but I love your event that you have at Veterans Park, that you invite your company, the realtors that are part of your organization, also leaders, to come out and really invest in the community by giving back in more than one way. So talk about that real quick.
Yeah, our food truck event was really our first engagement as we re-engaged our Diversity Council into the DIT. We decided to come up with this food truck event where we were able to highlight food trucks of color. So from those communities that are bringing forth foods that we normally don't try, right? How can we get them in and really make it about breaking bread, right? Because I think over history, we know so many positive things that happen by sitting down and having a meal, right? So, that lens was kind of where it came from. And then our team said, how can we make it really great? And even with your help, with some of your suggestions, showing up, a couple years at our event, how can we, make it more inclusive? How can we, really make it meaningful? And that's where now our last one, we put a little programming behind, but we also brought in all of our affinity groups that have local chapters in Minnesota to be there just as vendors. They weren't charged anything. They just were able to set their tables up. And then our agents and employees were able to learn more about them, right? Also looking at vendors coming from the BIPOC communities that had great closing gifts for our agents. We let them come in for free again to be a part of our event. So we're seeing this thing grow, right, in a very meaningful way. It is about the food, right? We like to highlight the food, but it's also about just, again, having those meaningful conversations, putting a little bit of programming around it. And to your point, doing it at a veterans park, right? I think is it makes it just mean more to us and just be more authentic at that approach. So now we're about 300 to 400 employees and agents that attend that event on a Thursday in the summer. And it's just something that we look forward to every year.
It is so much fun. And the fact that, way through the heart is through the stomach, right? But
Yeah.
the taste of different foods that typically people might not, be exposed to, I think is really, really neat. And also the fact that you are bringing all these partners where people can learn about the community and also the organizations that we're involved with. I think that's also pretty spectacular. One of the things that your team also did, which I thought was so impressive, was realize there was a need to create a Spanish website, because you did have a large Latino community within the Edina Realty area, right? In many of your markets. Talk about that, because I think that is something too that we're duplicating in other markets. I think it's really important, with Latinos being the largest. And right now we're actually in Miami celebrating this week is NARP at Latitude. So talk about that real quick for me, Jamar.
Yeah, and I don't think I've even shared this story with you. It goes back to your Own It presentation that you did for Home Service America, and our DIT team was able to sit in on that. Such a beautiful presentation. I think it could be repackaged every year just to look at the data side of it, but understanding that you got to understand who's in your community. You got to understand the vibe of your tribe, as they say, and really do something meaningful that could be impactful to create more inclusive spaces. So we know the Spanish-speaking population through the U.S. is just growing, and we're really trying to own it here in Minnesota as well. And how can we create more opportunities to connect with our communities that way? So the Spanish language website that we have was created in partnership with, one of the largest, Spanish ad companies we have here, New Publica, who actually helped us put together that website, not in Google Translate form, but in a meaningful form that we can really highlight and speak the language of our Spanish speaking community here. And, we're trying to do our best to get it out more. We're thinking about partnerships within our local community with places like, our soccer, Minnesota United. Can we be in their stadium highlighting our website? Bus benches. We're really encouraging our Spanish speaking agents to, to speak in the language, your native tongue, so you can invite more people in. And we have this platform to really highlight you on. So it's a step forward, because we all believe in the DEI moving forward. It's a step forward, but we know we can do a little bit better too with that. But I love kind of where we're at. And I think we're about maybe almost 2 years with our Spanish language website, where we're actually now growing it so big that we have to change to a different platform to host it. So I'm loving our initiative there.
Oh, it's very impressive. And the fact that you learn at the At Home with Diversity course, which I know all of your agents have taken and all of your team members as well, go out to the community. You're not expecting them to come to you, right? You're going out to the community. And of course, you mentioned 2 areas where I know it's huge for the Latino population, soccer being one of them.
Yeah.
I'm a soccer aficionado as well. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know, to really kind of touch on something that's kind of very emotional. And it was really something that brought, it was a pivotal turning point for all of us in this country. And that was the death of George Floyd, which actually happened right there. You're at the epicenter, ground zero of what happened. And so how was that affected? How did that change maybe, the people within your company, the leadership? How was that something that I think I love to talk about that a little bit more? And what impact did it have?
I always pause when I have this discussion, because the one thing I realized about George Floyd, and this is something that I had some leaders in our actually, Sherry Schmidt was one. We had a very honest conversation about it. Is seeing what happened to him, I would call it our service area, from where the office I lead, our 53rd and Lindell office, is the closest to ground zero where that happened. So that's an area that we're very passionate about with the 53rd and Lindell office, because we're so close to it. But it was impactful. I saw myself in George Floyd. A lot of people that I know who know me saw, a very large, African-American man have his neck kneeled on, and that could have been Jamar. So I think the impact of it, even in my personal community, was very large here. But for our organization, which I'm super proud of, when we re-engaged our DEI council, it was prior to what we saw happen to George Floyd. So I would say we were very well poised to maybe not deal with the magnitude of what happened, but we were poised to support our employees, our agents. One of the things that I did right away, because it happened on a Tuesday, the following Tuesday, I said, our sales meeting that I want to have for our office that we historically do in the afternoons, let's go down to George Floyd Square and just really be a part of it, feel it. There's a beautiful picture of me and a few of my agents actually kneeling there. We thought it was important for us to pay homage, because we felt our city hurting, and I know a lot of signs that people saw from our city were about the looting, the burning, and all that type of stuff. Yeah, that was the outcry. But ultimately, our city was really hurting. And at a time where I would say the world was hurting, because we all had to go back home, right? We all had to put masks on. We all had to do so many different things to get through a unconventional time for us. And then on demand, we saw that happen. To honestly, just being a Black man, I've seen it happen all my life, right?
People don't realize the
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah. So I'm just so proud of our company being able to really support. It wasn't just in blanket messaging. It wasn't just signing a letter. It was creating spaces to have conversations like this, but also understand how can we do better? And again, our DEI, our DIT team, was formed or re-engaged back in 2017. So we were already kind of working on how we can do better. So I think we were really ready to deal with whatever came at us, right? But also we were poised to handle and support our communities and organizations that we partner with around that trying time.
I know that you were such a support to us at the home services level, really kind of developing what we needed to do messaging wise, because it was a tough time. I know that Gino, like you were saying, Gino in our organization, who's our he's the head chief executive officer of our company, was just so touched and so proud of all the work that y'all did locally, Jamar. And I just want to mention that because he wanted to make sure you knew that. And you're involved with another project that I think is so monumental, and that is the Just Deeds program, which I think is in partnership with University of Minnesota, correct?
Correct.
And we've been very involved as far as at Home Services. You've done so much work in that, and we mentioned it at the very beginning when I introduced you. I think it's just something that needs to be done across the country. And so tell me more about what the Just Deeds program is about and what impact it has had as well.
Yeah, so again, I think from the last segment here that we talked about George Floyd, Just Deeds really came out of the conversation of what can we do as a collective, right? So it is a coalition, I like to always say. Nobody's getting paid to do Just Deeds, but really it was taking the good work that the mapping project, so that the University of Minnesota library system actually supports, where really it was about, let's look at our history right here in Minnesota. Specifically, let's highlight when racial restrictive covenants started. So this is back in 1910 in Minneapolis, where we saw the first one pop up. And let's get a bunch of volunteers, so citizens, stakeholders, to come in and let's start taking some of this, I would call it antiquated, system that we have, where we actually, put that title stuff out there, right? Let's really dig a little bit deeper and see how it was set up. And really through that, there was a heat map that mapping put together. And then when can we do next, right? How can we give our property stakeholders a voice in believing or not believing? And because I always say there's two sides of the coin of the way things were set up. And really it was, people like myself, even like you, weren't allowed access to the land that was being developed, right? Where people were building their generational wealth off of. It's explicitly said we can't own. And if we do, it goes back to the original heirs. That's not enforceable anymore, at least in our state. Governor Walz in 2019 passed a bill that can't be enforced. But prior to that, those things can come back, and some people that were owning property could lose their property if they didn't meet the criteria, I like to call it. So it's really highlighting and unearthing our dirty little secret. But then also, I think when real estate, where we came in, Edina Realty, from the title side of it, is this is something that, city attorneys, because that's one stakeholder in this mission with Just Deeds, and the title arm knew about this language. But the property owner, the people that are going to that closing table, they're not reading that language. They're not looking for it. Unless you point it out to them, it doesn't really matter, right? But now we're making it matter. And I love kind of where we're at with just really bringing it to every county, every city, having them come up with a resolution to support Just Deeds, and then giving an opportunity to talk to, city stakeholders, property owners, people that are even renting, right? The land I live on, I want to know the history. I want to know what I can do. I want my voice to be heard, saying I don't believe in this, so I can denounce it with a one-page filing for free at closing. Or even if you're not closing, you still can do the one-page filing saying that I don't believe in the way that this land was written. I'll just say it that way. So I love kind of that action piece that I think so many people were looking at after what we saw happen to George Floyd. What can we do, right? What can we do to do better? What can we do to really unearth the history of the land that we're living on to move forward, so it's not something our kids are trying to unpack 20 to 30 years down the line?
Right. And you know what, Jamar, a lot of people don't look at it, but but people of color do. Like it stands out. Like it stands out when you see Hispanics are not allowed to own land, or blacks are not, people of color are not allowed to own land, and therefore it goes back exactly what you stated. So I think it's a huge impact. And I had someone said that tell me recently that in California they saw that in their deeds and they're like, oh my God, what is this? So it is something that I think is extremely helpful. And I'm so proud that this is something that people are doing as a passion, and they're actually volunteering to do this work. And I think it's something that we can take along to other companies as well across the home services family of companies that work under our umbrella. So I know that you also partner with the Minnesota Twin Cities Festival, and I hope I said that right. Every year I have yet to be able to attend, but you promote different series, you've had different amazing films. And the one that I'm passionate about, just because I've been very involved with, is the project with Bruce Orstein and Chris Jenkins that's coming out on October 25th. And that is The Shame of Chicago, Shame of the Nation, a film, which is a documentary series that they've created. And so how can we find out about that film and the project and your what that event's all about?
Yeah, well, I will say the opportunity to partner on this film. Thank you, thank Home Services for really supporting a film like Shame of Chicago. Just like we're trying to unearth our history here in Minnesota around the Just Deeds and Mapping project. We have our own little kind of a documentary called Jim Crow in the North that really talks about Just Deeds and Mapping. Well, Shame of Chicago, it's a documentary that really touches on, how our cities, and I would say for Chicago, you always hear about gentrification being the bad word, right? Well, there's a reason why they headed in that direction, because there was a lot of homeowners of color, communities of color in Chicago, and then it was a way for them to essentially equity strip, right? And then really that's being highlighted on this documentary. So I'm glad it's coming out. I'm glad we're able to support it. The Twin Cities Film Fest is a great platform for that. The one thing we believe with our DIT is not just about the food truck, right? Just the eating and getting to know each other. It's about the education piece too, right? So how can we let others know about the rich stories that we have in our community, especially around home ownership? We're looking at bringing it in this year as a client event for our agents to bring their clients to bring themselves to. So for $10, you can have a red carpet experience. You can see the film. There's going to be a short kind of Q&A panel discussion. Myself will be there with one of the producers. And also we're asking one of our city attorneys from the Just Eat Project, Maria Cisneros, to sit on that panel to have a discussion about what Chicago's gone through, but also put it in Minnesota lens on what we're dealing with Just Deeds. But for Home Services to step up and support this film, it's really going to bring it forward. I'm hoping, we get to see it exclusively, but after that, they'll be able to finish that fifth part of the documentary, and then maybe we'll see it streaming on a platform. That's my eyes, so we can get more of our people with Home Service America seeing it. But at the very least, that it'll be coming to a theater near you, right? So you can see this powerful documentary. We're only going to see the first two parts, but we're excited to support this film going forward. And our DIT, it checks off all the boxes of things that we want to support and bring within our organization.
It so does. And, each of these, four out of the five documentary series are so compelling, because even though it is kind of focused on Chicago, it's actually something that happened in the 200 major cities across the country, right? Where this actually shows the progression of where wealth stops and why it did not, and why there is such a low homeownership rate. It really does show a really big lens on it. And I think such an important project. I love, they're going to actually be our next guest. So I just want to make sure people stay tuned, right, for that, because I want to talk a little bit more about it. Now, you are the president-elect. I'm so proud of you for MAR, Minnesota Area Realtors. And what does that role mean to you, Jamar?
Well, it means being in front of a larger group than I'm currently in front of at Edina Realty. But no, very seriously, it's an honor to be selected, because that's not a position that just anybody gets to apply for, right? You have to have a a background in leadership. And I think through my time on the board, prior to me even getting in leadership at Edina Realty, but my time at the board at MAR as a board of director, I actually am, which a lot of people don't know, myself and another colleague of mine, Julia Israel, who's doing the same work that I'm doing at Edina Realty for Keller Williams. We both started on a DEI task force at MAR, and we wrote the charter to make it a committee, which at the national level, we recognize our state DEI committees. Only a third of our state associations have a DEI committee. I know I'm talking about local presidents, but the very low engagement of that. I will be the second in 3 years Black president at MAR and their history. So it also tells you kind of where MAR's at with our DEI council, but just our lens of diversity, because within that boardroom that I sit in looks a lot different than when I was a part of it from 12 to 15, right? We're seeing a lot of change agents of color in there. So I'm honored to be able to lead. I'm honored to be able to lead with Edina Realty's permission, right? And take in 9,000 members. We're a decent sized local organization, but we do work in concert with our sister city, St. Paul. They have another 8,000 members there, and then in our state, because we just got done with our convention, we're about 22,000 agents, realtors here in the state of Minnesota. So to be a leader for that population, it's an honor for me, but also when I look at just my passions and how I can affect change from a boardroom, I'm just excited to be a part of that, because we have some great young leaders coming through the pipeline, and to be a sort of a mentor or a perspective, right, for them, I think is so important.
It's so impressive. And you're absolutely right. People don't realize there are a lot of steps to get to the role where you're in. So you've a proven leader and obviously done so much work in the community. And the fact that you are looking, and only a third of the state have council, which is so surprising. We need to be more advanced. You're helping elevate it and really making an impact. And I know that you're going to go on from this role. I'll see you as an AR president one day. So anyway, and I know that, that's another day for another story, but I want to talk about the LGBTQ plus Real Estate Alliance, because that event is happening as well. And we will be there, and we will be signing our pledge, Gino and I, for their Stop Hate in Real Estate campaign. So I'm really proud that we are stepping forward to make sure that we, are the first to do that, and also pledge that we've got to stop that hate in real estate campaign going. And so I want to know what your thoughts are around that, and what is MAR doing as well in that space.
Yeah, well, we're big supporters of the Alliance in that space. Again, kind of going back to who we invited even to Edina Realty's food truck, all the affinity groups, the Alliance here. I was proud to say the CEO of the Alliance group, Ryan, is actually out of the state of Minnesota. So, from the local to the state, we're really supporting the Alliance's mission moving forward. And I love all the good work that they're doing. And, the Stop Hate campaign is something that I've been watching closely, especially being out of the Minneapolis area here, where we have a very large Alliance community here. How can we support all of our communities moving forward? And I think it's important to make, again, more inclusive spaces so everybody feels welcome. And, the leader, my predecessor, who used to be a manager here at Edina Realty, that I took over the 53rd and Lindell office from, he identifies with the Alliance community as well. So I would tell you, when I looked at leadership, even with our own organization, you go back to the story of Emma Robick, but also to my past predecessor, we really supported diversity, but I understand that, you can't be out loud in every space. And that's something that I think is ridiculous. You should authentically be yourself in every space. So the opportunity to support that initiative moving forward and say, listen, we're all one big community at large, and how can we support each other so we can rising tide lift all, so they see their opportunities. And I would say, for me, the passion, and I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, my nonprofit work touches exactly the mission of this too, right? And how do we make more inclusive spaces so we understand our children feel included in the conversation as they're coming through and trying to figure out who they want to be, right? So it's important for us to support initiatives like this.
Well, and also it is also a campaign that they are spearheading, but it's the Asian Real Estate Association of America. It is the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. It's Women Up. Those organizations all coming together for this campaign, which I think is really number one, important and very instrumental in us as an organization realizing as a country that real estate and homeownership should be for all, right? The opportunity for everyone. That's what we're about, right? And I know that my father, who came to this country from Colombia, always talked about the dream of owning his own home, something that he never thought possible in his own country, and how important it was for us to be able to achieve that. And I think it's the right of anyone who is able to, willing, ready, and able to be able to successfully, without fear of discrimination, buy the home of their dreams. And so anyway, that's why I'm so passionate about it. And thank you, Jamar, for sharing that as well. Now, I'm so impressed with you, Jamar, because you also have, worked with historically underserved communities. You talked about that, just the mission. Why is that? What do you want to say about that to all of our members out there that are listening?
Well, it's the work to understand that just because you may experience some privileges, and I will say I experienced privileges as well growing up. I grew up in a predominantly white community, and it was only by way of my mother not having a driver's license. Well, she had a driver's license, but she didn't own a vehicle and needed to be on bus transportation, where her job took her from, predominantly Black community in North Minneapolis, where I was born, to me being raised out in a southern suburb of Minneapolis, and knowing the disparities that exist, but also how uncomfortable maybe me being in a predominantly white area myself, telling my story, I felt. But to me, there was an advantage of that because I saw, on average, two-parent households, right? On average, everybody had a car. On average, there was just support, but there was a high, which I didn't really, translate this back then. A lot of people own their homes. We lived in an apartment, but a lot of people own their homes. And then seeing what some of my friends were able to go on to college with no debt, but a little bit of financial planning along the way. So I think when you think about just home ownership, creating more inclusive spaces, not everybody gets that opportunity. Not everybody gets to see that view. So bringing that information down, or I like to say paying it back instead of paying it forward, I think it's important to support communities that really need help because maybe they didn't see it. Maybe it really was about keeping that roof over their head until the child turns 18 and then the child's on their own. I know that was my mission. I mean, when I went to college, luckily I had a decent job to be able to experience some college on my own without any debt. But ultimately, my parents said, when you're done at 18, if you're going to stick around here, you got to pay rent. And I understood that, but some people don't have to worry about that. They just know that it's written that, we had enough financial literacy young enough to create a fund for you to go to college, for some to have fun, right? But to others to really realize what that next step in life looks like. And I think when we unpack real estate, it's really the only single wealth building tool that exists that makes the most sense for a lot of people, and not everybody has access to it. So how do we really do that in a very open and honest way? And again, I think it's through change agents, leaders of color coming in and bringing that information back with their communities, but also getting the people young enough, right, with around financial literacy. I know in our market, a bill has been passed that financial literacy is required course in high school now. So you're not going to pass high school now. When I think my teacher told me, hey, Jamar, show up and you're going to get a C, right? Now you got to show up and pay attention a little bit because you got to get that financial literacy piece. So you understand, what you're really fighting for when you get out there and get your first job, and how to really transition into becoming a parent, under no constraints, right? It's really a choice that you have to do so. So my passions lie so much in getting to the youth and educating the youth early. That financial literacy piece is huge. And I think the more we embrace it within a real estate community, the more I think we'll see more programs adopted, not only at the high school level, but also within some of the community worship places and things like that. Because I don't know, just real estate's an awesome industry. And if we're able to understand how we can use it to build our wealth and create opportunities, I think we all thrive.
Oh, and I could not, you so beautifully said, and it touched my heart because everything you said, of course, exactly my experience as well, right? And it's funny because my son, who went to school, and we were surrounded as well in my community where I live by very affluent, a lot of Falcons players, Braves play, lots of opportunities here. And it wasn't until he went to college where he realized how truly blessed and privileged he was, because he saw people from all walks of life attend college. And he did, I mean, just he's got the heart of gold. So both my kids are that way. They didn't realize it until they got, because there were people that always had more right around them. So that really does make an impact. And I love that that the state is actually requiring this. I certainly think it needs to even start at middle school, because that's really when you start to form those ideas about financial, how do I save money instead of spending it, on things that are not going to matter in the future. I really like that. Now, I cannot believe it, Jamar. This has been so much fun, and we are almost out of time. I always end up with one fun question, and I really want to hear from you. If you weren't doing real estate, what would you be doing instead?
Well, I think I dropped some breadcrumbs earlier in my intro. Now that I think about it, my passion has always been around coaching basketball. My stepfather played Division I basketball. I had his brothers also were coaches at Division I as well. And then I, spent 12 years coaching high school basketball before I got into real estate. So I think if one job that I would be doing right now, shout out to Coach Prime, making a difference in the college football arena, I would be for sure still coaching high school basketball. But my passion will be served again. I have two twin boys, Jackson Hendricks, that will be 7 in November. Their mother played college basketball, so I'm sure that's going to be in their future. And I really look forward to when they get a little older, kind of re-engaging that passion. So that's why Daddy's working so hard right now, making a difference in these spaces, so I really can have more time to kind of lead them and be their leader on the court. That's one. The second job, and this is something a lot of people don't know about me, from my retail background, I worked for JCPenney's and Target. I actually was an entry-level buyer right out of high school for pennies, and back then you were on commission, so that's why I got very comfortable with the transition to real estate commission, because I was on it back in high school. But I was an entry-level buyer for JCPenney's, and I was in their athletic shoes and apparel department, and I do have this affinity for fashion. So I started and still own a clothing line called Underground Music and Fashion, and really before, when I got my real estate license, that was coaching high school basketball, fashion designer. Real estate was kind of my side hustle. That really was a passion of mine. So I probably would still be leaning into that in a very honest way, even if it's just helping youth design sweatshirts and sweatpants for basketball season or whatever, or just doing identity wear. That's something that's still a passion of mine. I loved every fall and spring season coming out with the new wearables and slapping logos on things, and I really enjoyed doing that. So secretly probably still coaching basketball and still working on my underground music and fashion line.
I had no idea. That's exciting, and how fun, an entrepreneur all around. Do you still coach basketball by chance?
Well, I don't coach it, but I will be
You
returning.
watch it, and you're an avid follower of all the games. Oh,
All the games, all the games.
I love it. Well, I really have just enjoyed our time together, Jamar. I really want to thank you so much for joining me and our all of our audience out there. And I think it's just amazing, all the work that you're doing. And certainly you've definitely make an impact. You make an impact in my life. I always look to you whenever I need a question answered, or a follow-up. I always reach out to you. And you know that's because I really feel that you are one of those leaders that I look up to. So anyone, this is a wrap up of another impactful episode of Diversity Matters. And I hope that you were as touched by Jamar's work as I've been. Thank you so much for all that you do, that you are all making an impact. You're truly making a difference. And thank you to our audience, right? For your unwavering support of this show, because it fuels our mission to foster a world where diversity truly thrives. If you want to stay updated on future episodes and exclusive content, be sure to follow us on Diversity Matters Series. That's diversitymattersseries.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is diversitymattersyoutube.com. And don't forget to join me next month on October 25th, right here on Diversity Matters, as we connect with Bruce Ornstein and Chris Jenkins, who are with the Shame of Chicago, Shame of the Nation Project. I'm extremely passionate about the work that Bruce and Chris are doing. And when you hear about their documentary series in more detail, I know you're going to understand why. Until then, everyone, be kind, be inclusive, embrace the beauty of diversity. Thank you for tuning in, and see you all soon. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye, Jamar. Thank you for